Danny DeVito turned 80 years old in November 2024. And when you look at his life, it's not sad. It's absolutely remarkable. But the journey to get here, that's a story most people don't know. This is a man who was told he'd never make it, who faced rejection hundreds of times, who lived in his car while chasing an impossible dream, and who refused to change himself even when Hollywood offered him everything to do so. This isn't a story about sadness. It's a story about defiance, resilience, and proving everyone wrong. Let's start from the beginning. Danny DeVito was born on November 17, 1944, in Neptune Township, New Jersey, a working-class shore community where life was tough, but people were tougher. His parents, Daniel DeVito Sr. and Julia, were Italian-American immigrants trying to make ends meet. His father owned a small business, and his mother worked various jobs to keep the family afloat. Danny was the youngest of 5 children, and from the start, he was different. He has a genetic condition called multiple epiphyseal dysplasia, also known as Fairbanks disease. This condition affects bone growth, particularly in the hips and knees, and it's why Danny stands at 4 feet 10 inches tall. But height was just one aspect of the condition. What most people don't realize is that this condition causes chronic pain, stiffness in the joints, and early onset arthritis. For Danny, this meant growing up with physical challenges that most kids never had to think about. But here's the thing about Danny DeVito. He never let it define him. In interviews over the years, he's talked about his childhood with warmth and humor, not bitterness. He's described his neighborhood as vibrant, full of characters, and rich with the kind of street education you can't get from books. His family wasn't wealthy, but they were close. His sisters, especially Angela, would become important figures in his life later on. Before Danny DeVito became an actor, he had a completely different career, one that surprises almost everyone who learns about it. He was a licensed beautician, and he wasn't just dabbling. He was serious about it. In the early 1960s, Danny enrolled in beauty school and completed the required training. He's mentioned in interviews that he initially got into it because, well, beauty schools were full of women, and he was a young guy looking to meet people. Fair enough. But once he got into it, he discovered he actually had a talent for it. He graduated and went to work at his sister Angela's salon in New Jersey. The salon had a memorable name, Curl Up and Dye. Danny worked there cutting and styling hair, and by his own admission, he got pretty good at it. He took pride in his work, learned the craft, and even developed his own techniques. It was during this time, while working in the salon, that fate intervened. One of his clients was married to a theater producer, and after chatting with Danny and sensing something special about him, the man suggested Danny should try acting. Danny had never seriously considered it before, but the seed was planted. In 1966, Danny DeVito applied to the American Academy of Dramatic Arts in New York City. But here's the twist. He wasn't applying to be an actor. He wanted to study makeup artistry. He figured his experience in beauty school would translate well, and he could work behind the scenes in theater and film. The school, however, required all applicants to perform an audition monologue, regardless of their intended focus. Danny had never acted before. He scrambled to prepare something, chose a piece from The Rainmaker, and gave it his best shot. The audition panel saw something in him that he hadn't seen in himself. They accepted him, but not for makeup. They wanted him in their acting program. Danny was confused but intrigued. He went back to the salon to think about it. A few days later, the academy called again. They offered him a partial scholarship. That second call changed everything. Danny DeVito decided to take the leap. He moved to New York City to study acting, leaving behind the relative security of his beautician career for a completely uncertain world of theater. The late 1960s were rough for Danny. He was a student at the academy, working odd jobs to survive, and living in the kind of New York City apartments that were barely habitable. At one point, he shared an apartment with another struggling actor, Michael Douglas. Yes, that Michael Douglas, son of the legendary Kirk Douglas. But here's what made their friendship genuine. Michael didn't advertise his famous lineage. He was just another broke actor trying to make it. The two young men lived in a cramped apartment with broken heating, occasional cockroach visitors, and rent they could barely afford. They ate cheap food, shared scripts, and encouraged each other through countless rejections. This friendship would prove to be one of the most important relationships of Danny's life, though neither of them could have known it at the time. They were just two guys trying to survive in the brutal world of New York theater, sharing the struggle and the dream. After graduating from the academy, Danny entered what he would later describe as the most difficult period of his life. He auditioned constantly for anything and everything. Theater productions, commercials, small film roles. It didn't matter. He just wanted to work, to act, to prove he could do this. The rejection was relentless. Casting directors didn't know what to do with him. He was too short for leading roles, too distinctive looking to blend into the background, too unconventional for the standard character parts. He's spoken in interviews about being told he was too this, or not enough that hundreds of times. To survive, Danny took whatever work he could find. He parked cars. He worked as a doorman. There are stories of him taking truly bizarre jobs just to pay rent. Anything that would give him enough money to keep auditioning and keep the dream alive. These weren't glamorous years. These were survival years. But Danny kept going. He did small off-Broadway productions, often for little or no pay. He took any stage role offered to him, treating each one as a chance to hone his craft. He believed that if he just kept working, kept improving, kept showing up, eventually something would break his way. In 1971, Danny got cast in an off-Broadway production of One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest, playing the character Martini. It wasn't a huge role, but it was in a prestigious production, and Danny threw himself into it. He performed that role for months, developing the character, understanding the nuances, becoming Martini. Then, in 1975, came the phone call that changed everything. The play was being adapted into a film, and Michael Douglas, Danny's old roommate, was one of the producers. Michael remembered Danny's performance and pushed for him to audition for the film version. But there was a complication. Danny had already played Martini on stage, and the film's director, Milos Forman, wanted fresh interpretations. Danny auditioned anyway, and because he'd spent months living with the character on stage, he understood Martini in a way no other actor could. He knew every line, every gesture, every emotional beat. Director Forman recognized his depth and cast him. The film One Flew Over the Cuckoo's Nest became a cultural phenomenon. It won 5 Academy Awards: Best Picture, Best Director, Best Actor, Best Actress, and Best Adapted Screenplay, sweeping the major categories. While Danny's role was small, he was part of something monumental. More importantly, Hollywood finally knew who he was. Fresh off the success of Cuckoo's Nest, Danny could have pursued film roles. But in 1978, he read a script for a new television sitcom called Taxi, and he became obsessed with one character, Louis De Palma, the dispatcher. This decision baffled everyone around him. His agent advised against it. Industry friends told him that movie actors who went to television were committing career suicide. In the late 1970s, there was still a strong stigma against film actors doing TV work. It was seen as a step down, an admission that you couldn't make it in movies. Danny didn't care. He read the character of Louis De Palma and saw something special, a completely irredeemable, nasty, selfish, mean-spirited little tyrant who was also somehow compelling and darkly funny. Louis wasn't a lovable grouch. He was genuinely awful, and Danny knew he could make it work. The audition became legendary. Instead of simply reading the sides they gave him, Danny performed an extended monologue, improvising as Louis, channeling all the character's venom and pettiness and spite. The creators were stunned. James L. Brooks, one of the show's developers, immediately fought for Danny to get the role. But the network, ABC, had concerns. They worried that Danny was too short, that audiences wouldn't accept him, that he was too abrasive. Brooks reportedly told them that if they didn't cast Danny DeVito, he would walk away from a project. They relented. Taxi premiered in September 1978, and Louis De Palma became an instant sensation. The character was unlike anything on television, caustic, manipulative, and completely unapologetic. Viewers were fascinated. The show's writers even had to build a custom dispatcher's booth scaled to Danny's height, which became one of the most iconic sets in TV history. Danny's performance was extraordinary. He brought layers to Louis that could have easily been one-dimensional in lesser hands. Yes, Louis was mean, but Danny found moments of vulnerability, flashes of humanity, and a twisted logic that made the character feel real. He prepared for each scene by tapping into real emotions: the frustration of rejection, the anger at being underestimated, the determination to prove himself. The accolades followed. In 1980, Danny won a Golden Globe for Best Supporting Actor in a television series. In 1981, he won an Emmy for Outstanding Supporting Actor in a comedy series. These weren't just participation awards. They were recognition from the industry that Danny DeVito had created something truly special. While Taxi was still on the air, Danny began building a film career. But he was smart about it. He chose roles that showed his range, that proved he wasn't just Louis De Palma. In 1984, he appeared in Romancing the Stone alongside his old friend Michael Douglas and Kathleen Turner. He played Ralph, a bumbling criminal, and showed his ability to be funny in a completely different way than Louis. The film was a massive hit, and suddenly Danny was a bankable movie star. This led to the 1987 sequel, The Jewel of the Nile, and then to one of his most iconic roles, Throw Mama from a Train, 1987, which he also directed. This dark comedy showcased Danny's talent behind the camera, as well as in front of it, and it proved he had vision as a filmmaker. Then came Twins in 1988. The premise was absurd. Danny DeVito and Arnold Schwarzenegger as genetically engineered twins separated at birth. On paper, it sounded ridiculous, but the film worked beautifully, thanks to the chemistry between the two leads and Danny's ability to ground even the most outlandish concepts with genuine emotion. Twins was a huge commercial success and cemented Danny as a leading man, not just a character actor. Throughout the late 80s,